Hello, my name is Nick Nicol. I'm a barrister at One Pump Court. You can find further details on my website or on the Chamber's website, which you can see on the screen. Thank you for coming to this video. This video is all about NowMedical and their work for local councils' housing departments in England, particularly when they consider if homeless people who have applied for their housing are vulnerable due to physical or mental health problems. Many local housing authorities use NowMedical to provide medical advices on individual housing applications. Those advices are turned around in quick time for £30 or £50 each. These are the people I have come across who produce reports regularly for NowMedical. Dr. Keane, the one at the top, is the one who started it all and whose name has most commonly appeared on reports in the past. Please let me know if you're aware of any other names. I wrote an article about NowMedical in 2007 in the Journal of Housing Law. Dr. Keane, the principal of NowMedical, emailed me to ask if he could see it. I sent him a copy and invited him to comment. He has never communicated with me since. Instead, he has twice had his solicitors write to me threatening defamation proceedings. I have no idea why he chooses to be so aggressive and litigious, but it is exactly the kind of behaviour I would expect from someone who is afraid that my criticisms may be correct. I agreed to put a statement from NowMedical on my website, where it remains for your reading pleasure if you want to hear his point of view direct from his lawyer's mouth. NowMedical solicitors accuse me of having some kind of personal animus against NowMedical. I don't. I have never met any of their personnel or had any other direct dealings with them. It is just that, having seen numerous examples of their work, my genuine and honest opinion, based on my years of legal experience and specialist knowledge, is that their work is poor and does not follow the guidance provided by the courts. It is homeless applicants who suffer as a result. NowMedical use a template containing standard wording for their medical advices. Nothing wrong with that, but I am concerned with what they actually put in the template. In this video, I will go through the NowMedical template. Although I will refer to some of the law, I am assuming you know the basics already. There are other sources you can go to for details of the relevant law. In summary, the law relating to homeless people is in Part 7 of the Housing Act 1996. These cases on the screen at the moment are the leading court precedents on the meaning of vulnerability and the use of medical advice when considering vulnerability, and form the background to my analysis of NowMedical's template. My version of the template is compiled from a number of examples of NowMedical's use of their template, using their standard wording. I have, of course, removed any names or other references to any identifiable person. NowMedical's opinion is normally headed medical advice, as you can see here. NowMedical have never, as far as I'm aware, examined a single one of the patients about whom they have been asked to advise. Therefore, their advice should be about explaining the existing medical evidence, not giving an opinion on the patient's diagnosis or the consequences of such a diagnosis for that patient. It is rare that a NowMedical advice is limited in that way. NowMedical's template starts with two subheadings: matter under consideration, which you can see here, and information considered. Under the first subheading, there will usually be a few words summarizing what is being considered. In this case, you can see it says homelessness, vulnerability on medical grounds. The actual test arising from statute or case law is never set out. As for information considered, the applicant's full medical records are never listed unless an increasingly unlikely sequence of events occurs. The homeless applicant has an advisor who has obtained them and passed them on to the local authority. The local authority has passed them on to NowMedical, and NowMedical has taken the time to look at them. It is also worth looking at this list in detail because, in my experience, crucial evidence is often left out, most likely due to the local authority not having sent it to NowMedical rather than it being NowMedical's fault. On some rare occasions, NowMedical will themselves identify missing information, but more commonly, they regard a lack of relevant information as a sufficient basis for considering that it does not exist, is not needed, cannot be obtained, or should not be sought. NowMedical's standard advice will then go on to consider the applicant's medical issues in turn. In my experience, it is rare that the collective impact of more than one issue would be considered, as it were, together. The most fundamental element in considering the vulnerability of homeless persons under the Housing Act is the impact of homelessness on the patient in question. I have yet to see a NowMedical report in which this is even mentioned, let alone considered, save in one respect, namely the patient's ability to access medical care or support. There is an example of this down towards the bottom of the page. Where it says the applicant has been able to attend appointments and access support, and on that basis, the medical advisor would not consider the patient vulnerable as defined. NowMedical invariably conclude that such care or support would remain easily accessible when the person's homeless, which leads me to think that they are probably unaware of the research detailing the practical difficulties when a person is homeless. NowMedical's reasoning also fails to take account of the self-selecting nature of the people they are considering. Only those able to access counsel and advisors' offices and to attend appointments would have made applications leading to a referral to NowMedical. If these abilities constitute evidence that a person is not vulnerable, then no person is vulnerable. Moreover, many, if not most, applicants are actually in accommodation up to the time of NowMedical's consideration of their case, so that their abilities to attend appointments or to do anything up to that point is not much of a guide as to their abilities when they have no accommodation at all. In relation to each medical issue relevant to vulnerability, NowMedical use a process of flawed logic described in the unreported county court case of Thomas against Lambeth Borough Council in 2017. Firstly, they refer to what the applicant's doctors say about the patient. So here on the template, you can see under mental health problems, it starts with the applicant has a history of, and then it describes the problem as the medical advisors have put it. They then, NowMedical then go on to say that what the applicant is suffering from is not serious. Here we have an example here. There is nothing to suggest the applicant is actively suicidal or acutely psychotic. And then they conclude, as you can see in the bottom paragraph on this page, that based on the fact that the applicant is not in what they define as a serious category, they're not vulnerable. The obvious flaw is that whether what the applicant is suffering from is serious or not is not normally relevant by itself. In any event, the conclusion does not follow from the premise. An applicant can be vulnerable without their condition being serious. This reasoning also begs the question of what constitutes serious. NowMedical use proxy indicators, such as the medication being prescribed, the nature of the applicant's condition, or the treatment being received. They will commonly suggest that the medication is standard or the dosage low. And you can see an example of that here. She is being prescribed drug and dosage which is a standard antidepressant medicine at a low/standard/high dose. They would commonly suggest that the applicant is not psychotic or suicidal, which you can see here as well, or has not needed emergency services or hospitalization. Another example here. One psychiatrist has remarked in a report on a case I worked on that for certain mental health diagnoses, and it's worth taking note of what he says, the treatment of choice would be psychological therapy and not pharmacological intervention, and hence the dosage of medication has no significance to the severity or lack of severity of the condition. It would be unwise to consider that only patients with suicidal thoughts or psychotic symptoms have a serious mental illness or need emergency psychiatric services. This is not the widely understood definition of a serious mental illness amongst psychiatry professionals. Patients can and do have psychiatric morbidity that severely affects their social and personal functioning without being suicidal or psychotic, and neither of these symptom domains are used as markers of severity in any diagnostic classification symptoms per se. I would have thought that a similar line of reasoning would apply to many physical ailments as well. Moving on to page 2, although a lot of NowMedical advices don't actually reach that far. NowMedical for many years used as an alternative to whether a patient's condition is serious a different test, namely whether their reasonable function, including, for example, their cognition or rational thought, is impeded or impaired. And you can see an example of that here. The applicant's mental health problem is not profound or enduring enough to interfere with her ability to think rationally or her cognitive thought processing. And down here for physical problems, there's nothing to suggest that her mobility or activities of daily living are significantly impaired. I have for many years pointed out that this is not the correct legal test. While someone whose reasonable function is impeded, whatever that actually means precisely, may well qualify as vulnerable, not everyone who is vulnerable within the meaning of the Act has difficulty functioning at a reasonable level. An example can be found in the old case of Queen against Camden ex parte Pereira. In that case, the applicant functioned perfectly well if they were housed, but if they were homeless, they would be liable to descend into serious drug use. NowMedical also sometimes resorts to the heads I win, tails you lose type of thinking. You can see one side of the coin here where it refers to receiving some kind of standard treatment and urgent intervention is not required. The reasoning goes that if the applicant is not receiving the requisite medical attention, that means they don't need it, and therefore their medical condition is not serious enough to be regarded as making them vulnerable. However, if they are receiving the relevant treatment, they have the support they need, and so they're not vulnerable for that reason. Of course, this reasoning, taken to its logical conclusion, would mean that no one was ever vulnerable. A related problem to this is that of confusing treatment with resolution. NowMedical sometimes state that the fact that an applicant is receiving treatment means that there isn't a problem. Of course, this is not true. Not all treatments are cures, even over the long term. Sometimes treatments don't even have the required effect, not the intended effect. After each issue has been considered, there is a summary paragraph, which you can see down at the bottom, these 3 lines. The standard wording has changed over the years, but the current version seems to be that in summary, for the reasons given, I don't think the specific medical issues in this case are of particular significance compared to an ordinary person. This is not an explanation of the existing evidence, but a statement of medical opinion. There is no mention of the impact of homelessness. Below the summary paragraph will be the medical advisor's name and the letters indicating their professional qualifications. I've put down here all the medical qualifications that the people I mentioned earlier have between them. Again, this information is worth examining. Some NowMedical advisors have been found not to be practicing practitioners. Dr. Wilson, for example, apparently is not currently practicing as a psychiatrist. And that was revealed in the unreported Canter Court case of Cherry against the London Borough of Tower Hamlets in 2018. And also in the case of Sharla, which was listed earlier in my video, the relevant qualifications were not seen for the NowMedical advisor in that particular case. Dr. Keane was a GP. The applicant's medical advisor was a psychiatrist. They were both talking about psychiatric issues, and the Court of Appeal warned that the two should not be regarded as comparing like with like. Just looking at these letters after the name here, MD means Doctor of Medicine. DFSRH means Diploma of the Faculty of Sexual and Reproductive Healthcare. BM is Bachelor of Medicine. DRCOG is Diploma of the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. MBBS and indeed MBCHB mean Bachelor of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery. MRCGP is member of the Royal College of General Practitioners. MRCP is member of the Royal College of Physicians. DOC Med is Diploma in Occupational Medicine. And MRC Psych is member of the Royal College of Psychiatrists. All NowMedical advices end with a standard disclaimer, which you can see in the smaller writing at the bottom of the page. You can read it for yourself, but I'm just going to pick out one or two things from it. First of all, it says the report is intended to provide an expert, objective, and independent assessment. The use of the word independent stretches the meaning of that word. NowMedical is, of course, not part of any housing authority, but they do work exclusively for such authorities, never for homeless applicants. Their income, NowMedical's income, depends on producing advices which support hard-pressed local authorities in limiting access to housing. Of course, this doesn't mean that NowMedical consciously or deliberately tailor their advices to what an authority wants to hear, but it does suggest that they are not independent. Judges have commented in a number of cases, making it clear that NowMedical's failure to look at a patient's medical records, which you can see is standard here at the bottom of the disclaimer, and similarly, their failure ever to examine them, and again, that's part of the standard disclaimer at the bottom here. These issues are a significant limiting factor on the utility and weight of a NowMedical advice. NowMedical, through their solicitors, stated to me that a physical examination of applicants by NowMedical is neither necessary nor required. As I understood it, they regard this as a conclusive answer to the point about them not looking at medical records or conducting an examination, but I would say obviously it is not. As I told them myself, while it is possible to provide an opinion without examination, the lack of examination diminishes the value of that opinion, particularly in comparison with a medical advisor who has examined the patient. That concludes the video. I hope you found it useful. Comments and constructive criticism are, of course, very welcome. In particular, much of what I said is based on my experience. If you have a different experience, I'd love to hear about it. Please email me. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.